which is fantastic. Okay, we're going to start here in just a second. We are going to have a microphone in case anybody has any questions and they want to get it on audio. So we will be able to pass that around. We'll do real quick introductions. I hate introductions, but we'll do them just because, you know, it's a conference and it's what you should do. So William Tincup, President of Recruiting Daily, Virgo, decently, halfway decent person. Not always decent, sometimes decent.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Sullivan. I'm the Global Employer Brand Leader at Thermo Fisher Scientific.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Marshall. I'm actually in the middle of a job change, so my name tag says Magellan Health, but I'm actually joining Danaher Corporation on Monday to lead their Global Employer Brand team. And I'm probably most well known for helping, this will be the 6th employer brand I've built from the ground up at a Fortune 500 company. I'm kind of addicted to the build mode, so I've been inside of a lot of different organizations over the last 17 years.
So you have two practitioners here. Adrienne's also worked on the vendor side. One of the things we wanted to do with this session is to give you advice on, as a practitioner, on some of the things that you might see, behaviors that you might see with sales people of both services and software, the good and bad. So one of the things we're going to focus on is some of the things that we like as HR and recruiter, and some of the things that we don't like. So we'll start off positive. How about that? Let's do something different. We'll start off positive. Adrienne, give us your favorite sales experience. And it could be when you were on vendor side, but your favorite sales experience.
I would say my favorite sales experience is with the technology that I continue to use today, where there's a really strong partnership in problem solving. So it was a new technology that we purchased. It was kind of untested in the market. There wasn't a lot to go off of in terms of examples and case studies. And this vendor just completely partnered with us the entire time, problem solved, flexible, always reaching out to see how we were leveraging the technology, always looking towards making improvements with the platform, and then always upping the ante as well, because you know, it's a fairly expensive technology, and there has to be leadership buy-in for, you know, a cost of that nature, and really helped leverage the leader relationship as well. So could navigate leaders, problem solving, and that continual partnership. It wasn't like a sale and a runaway. It was ongoing improvement.
So the two things that I would probably highlight is how many people buy software? How many of you consider yourself buyers of software? Okay, great. How many of you sell software? Okay, I have a couple. All right. So in selling software, one of the things that happens with HR and recruiting is there's always an inevitable disaster. Okay? That's what you learn about user adoption and implementations, is you learn that as much as we try to prepare for everything, there's always a spot where I said that the data was perfect, the data's not perfect, there's always something. And that comes down to chemistry. How do you partner? How do you collaborate with the other person? How do you actually interact with them? And, you know, again, you could kind of hold each other's feet to the fire, both sides. Somebody doesn't show up to a meeting, somebody, you know, misses a deadline. You could hold that over, lord that over somebody, or you could be a human being and be a collaborator, a true collaborator. I'll get to the next point after we get your story. So what's your favorite sales story?
This is a recurring favorite of mine. If you see me at a conference and event, and I speak a lot, being invited to sort of an intimate gathering, a happy hour dinner, where I might not know sort of your technology or your brand yet, but you bring some interesting people together for an intimate conversation. I almost always accept those, and then we get to know each other organically, and there's really no agenda and there's no business, but just that value exchange of really great people in a room. That's the best way to engage with me.
So one of the things I'd highlight from that is HR recruiters, probably like a lot of industries, I'd say, or a lot of positions, we buy from people we like. So if y'all can do this in your minds, just build a 2x2, a BSE 2x2. And on one axis you have likability, and on the other axis you have compelling. So if you're likable, And the value offering, whether it's a service or software, if it's compelling, you've almost got the sale. Literally, the contract is halfway signed. It's up for you at that point not to be, or to not run into a situation where you're unlikable, or somehow discredit the compelling nature of whatever you're putting in front of somebody. But I would tell you that literally you're already on the 1 yard line. You're about to cross over and create a touchdown, unless you mess those two things up. That's how HR has always bought, and I probably will continue to buy forever. And so are recruiters. So do y'all have anything to add to that?
I would say that there's several people in my network that I have bought products from, and they're better than their product, and I'm buying the salesperson. Because oftentimes it's, yeah, that's in the roadmap, it's not coming yet, but because you have trust and a relationship with somebody, you're actually willing to take that gamble and go on that journey. I don't know if you feel the same way, Adrian.
Yeah, no, I absolutely feel the same way, because to your point, there's no perfect tech solution for what we're doing, right? We're a growing industry. There's a lot of change happening. We hear the promises all the time. It's in the roadmap, it's coming. But to Charlotte's point, if you really trust that partnership and you are willing to kind of take that road with them and the journey to see what happens.
So here's a trigger. If you want to know who's a bad salesperson, if they say yes all the time. A good salesperson, if not a great salesperson, will balance no out with yes. So as many times as they say yes to something, they'll say no. When somebody says, hey, do you have this technology, do you have this features and functionality? Yeah, no, we don't have that yet. I mean, I'd lie to you and tell you that it's coming, but I have no idea. So no, we don't do that. Now that's a risk. As a salesperson, it's a risk because you're thinking about your commission, you're thinking about quota. But what I would tell you is what you should be thinking about is that relationship, that long-term relationship. If you're honest and you tell them, hey, when it's no, tell them no. When it's yes, tell them yes. But a great salesperson says no pretty frequently. Like they know the edges of what the service offering or the software can do, and it just, if you try to push them past it, they're comfortable within themselves to say, yeah, I don't want to lie to you. I don't want to put us in a situation where a year from now you're like, well, you told me that it was going to do X, Y, and Z. So the ratio of yes to no, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. If you're selling, keep that in the back of your mind. If you're buying, keep that in the back of your mind. Y'all had that experience as well?
I feel like I'm a recovering one-size-fits-all solution buyer. So earlier in my career, I was working at large global brands, and we wanted to find that partner that checked the most of the boxes because we wanted to reduce the ecosystem down to smaller and smaller. And what I learned through that experience is that nobody does everything well. So buying that one-size-fits-all, you're actually suffering in a lot of different areas. So I stretch and push the teams I work with now to consider multiple partners and asking multiple partners to work together. Because I just want to know what you do really well and what your bread and butter is and where you can really help us shine. And I don't want to buy the other stuff. Even if you offer it, just be upfront about this is what we do better than anybody else, and we'll partner and play with other people in your ecosystem. And in my role at Magellan, I got 3 different partners to work together that all sell the same things so that we could create a best-in-class experience. And that was really something that I valued.
That's fantastic. I'd give you 2 examples of superior collaborators. They don't even probably consider themselves sales teams as much, and that's Career Builder and TMP Worldwide, both of which probably should be out of business by all practical purposes, but they're not. And in some cases they're thriving because of their approach to sales, their approach to a relationship. I remember flying into Salt Lake just 2 years ago. I flew into Salt Lake, and it was for HireVue, if you're familiar with the technology of HireVue. It was for a HireVue user conference. And the people in the car were from Title Max, a $1 billion title company. And they had no idea who I was. And so I started peppering them with questions like, what do you buy? And how do you buy? And this, that, and that. You know, like they had no idea. I was really interrogating them all the way up to Park Cities. And so one of the things they said about Career Builder was they said, you know, they get to know me, like old-fashioned sales tactics. They know my wife, well, all of them were women, so they know my husband, I guess, in that case. They know my kids' birthdays. I'm either a part of the Wine of the Month Club, Book of the Month Club, like these old-fashioned sales tactics these firms use, and they use because they actually care about the person. And like, I really pushed them on it. Like, is it just a bit, or do they really care? And everyone in the car said, no, I think if I went to another place, they would care. They would, if I asked them to help me move, they'd come down and help me move. They care about me. Have y'all had, I know you've had these experiences. So would you like to share?
I mean, absolutely. Caring is in being part of that relationship. I mentioned it in the beginning, the partnership is key and the relationship is key, because I think we know as buyers that not everything is going to be 100% successful. So we're looking for someone who's gonna kind of take the knocks with us, stand by our side, and support us through the relationship. But yes, on a personal level, I definitely want to feel like, hey, I'm having this problem, this challenge, can you help me? And you're more likely to trust somebody that is familiar kind of with your personal life as well. So no, I'm not best friends with every rep I have, but having that kind of close partnership and trust relationship is important.
One of the bits of advice I give vendors is you want to be their next call. Like, take Charlotte's situation. She's worked with, let's say at this point in her career, 100 different technologies. That's probably at the low end. Who's she going to call once she gets past her first 3, 4, 6 months to come in and fix what inevitably she'll find are some horror stories? Who's she going to call? That's why you never lie. Yeah. So that you become on that list, that short list of vendors, because I guarantee it's a short list of people that she knows once she gets in and figures out what's going on, that's who she's going to call. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah, it's the people that I trust to help me look good, to help me identify areas of opportunity and weaknesses, people that help me call out some things that I might not have access to in the data and analytics that I have, that they'll see holes in some of our solutions. There are a couple of, when you're asking me these questions, there's like literally names going through my head of like those 5 people. And I might not have necessarily have worked with them yet, but I will work with them at some point because they've put the time in and we've built that trusting relationship.
Oh, that's amazing. I hadn't even thought about that, but like they're putting in chips.
It's a long game.
They're looking at the long game.
It's a long game.
That there's a vulnerability and trust that's built into all that, but it's also, just caring to some degree.
We're in a 3-year contract right now with a particular vendor, and I have relationships with competing vendors that have been in it for the long haul. They saw that, I'm like, look, we're tied into this contract for 3 years, but that partnership and that, check-in has been there for the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, the worst thing you can do as an organization, especially a sales organization, is not touch base until your renewal. Like closer to your renewal. They used to build these models where it was like 6 months out from renewal, do this, 5 months out, do this, 4 months out, do this. And that's like one of the most horrible things that you can do, because you've basically said the time in between when you've signed the contract and that moment, I didn't really care, right? So advice that I give buyers is, it's multifold, we'll hit on it a couple times. But one is to never be a guinea pig. Although both Charlotte and Adrian are very adventurous, and so they would probably counter that. But I advise folks, recruiters and HR, ask like me questions. So if you're a 5,000 person healthcare facility in Tampa, Florida, how many other folks like me do you have using the application? I want to talk to them. So that's important for as a practitioner so that you're not the first of whatever to then use the software. Now they're going to have a different experience there. Second thing, and this is going to kill y'all. I don't like demo environment software. I don't like PowerPoint. So I like live software. So my advice to buyers, which again you're probably going to come after me after this, is I advise HR and recruiters not to look at anything but live software. Show me an instance. Crack open somebody's instance and let me look at it. I don't want to look at what's in this environment that you've created that's perfect. I don't want to look at that. So if you don't have that already, as a sales organization, you should create that. You should get there faster because it's a truer environment. It's like, you know what? I could show you PowerPoint. I could show you a roadmap. I could show you in a demo environment that's perfect and utopian, or I could just crack open a customer's account that we have that permission to use, and we'll just take a look at it. We'll see we'll see it together. That is a more authentic way to sell, and it also boxes you in as to what's in the future. All right, so I don't want to go negative automatically. Is there anything y'all want to respond to?
I think the importance of the referral network for me can't be underestimated. So if you're working with someone that I know or trust and they refer you into me, I'm going to take that call and I'm going to invest in the relationship because it's coming from a trusted source. So building that relationship and leveraging those as introductions is a really good way because we're more trusting of, if Adrian recommends, hey Charlotte, I met someone and you have to talk to them. I don't have budget for it this quarter, but I like them. We share ideas like that all the time with each other.
It's both sides too. So if you burn Adrian, right, it's Sherman on the way to Atlanta. It's scorched earth. So this community both buys people as likable and compelling solutions, but they also talk. There's an informal network on the back end of this where they talk amongst themselves, and they should.
Not even amongst ourselves. We have forums on Facebook and we share everything.
That's right. That's right. All the way down to like emails. So let's say you have a really cheesy email that you put in front of somebody. I've written more than my fair share of cheesy emails, so I'm not making fun of anybody. They'll screenshot that email and maybe redact some of the information or not and post it in a Facebook group.
I don't personally do that, but I'm on the groups and they do that.
But it cuts both ways. What's great is when you do a great job, especially with these two, if you do a great job, they'll tell other people. They'll be your best advocates. Why that's important outside of us talking about it is HR practitioners listen to other practitioners, right? So there's a pyramid of who you listen to is when you're a practitioner. At the bottom is vendors, nothing personal. In the middle is kind of your independent-ish type people, and at the top is practitioners. Those are the people that create the least amount of content, but it's also the most trusted content. So when Charlotte's on a webinar for somebody, she's putting her name and her brand and her company's brand on that. She's not going to do that for no reason at all. She cares about that company by the very nature of being involved in that. So on one side, do a great job, it's going to work for you. You go in, you say yes to everything, and you lie, and it blows up, it's also going to work for you, just in a negative way. So I want to get to, not necessarily negative things, but I do want to get to things that turn negative for you, things that you don't like. I wouldn't say things that turn you off, but that's not the right way. It's things that just you automatically, it's deal killers for you. Things that people do, their actions or words or treatment. What are some things that you've seen, been a part of, and that have turned you away from that particular vendor? Why don't you start us off?
Sure. I would say, we've been talking a lot about trust and relationships, and I recognize that there's probably several people that we don't have relationships with. It's not that we're not open to it. One of the things that kind of gets me is I recently had a referral for a vendor to present to myself, and I was really compelled by the offering. I was familiar with it. I had a lot of good feedback from my network. And I had one of my leaders on the call with me, and it was 25 minutes of, trying to build this relationship without putting any credibility at the front end. Mm-hmm. And, we're like, well, okay, well, what's the offering? Like let's cut to the chase here. So I think know your audience, who's going to be on the phone. And then, yes, of course, it's important to establish that relationship, but you haven't built it yet. So you're going to have to give us something compelling about the product up front.
For me, the biggest horror stories is actually the transition from sales to implementation. Yep. And you like that salesperson, then you buy the product, and it's a completely different implementation team quite often. And that's when the relationship completely shifts. You have to rebuild the trust, but there's nothing there. That you're asking the team to stretch and push in different ways. And the biggest horror story for me as a tech provider, that every stage of the implementation, everything we asked for was no. They just came from a place of no. It's not, well, let's see what we could do or when it could happen. Adrienne and I were actually working together at the time, so she knows who I'm speaking about. And we were working with 2 different partners. Remember, I asked 2 people to partner together. One partner said yes to everything. As crazy and as outlandish and insanely aggressive our timeline was, they told me yes for everything, and they made it happen. The other provider said no to everything. And then they would backtrack and say, well, actually, yeah, we can do that. But it was such a frustrating experience because it was so different, and the two, it seemed like the hands weren't talking to each other. And that happens a lot. And at that point, you're already kind of stuck. But that's when we start talking to each other.
For help.
And other people are saying, hey, I'm thinking about buying this vendor. What do you think? And we're like, oh my gosh, implementation is a nightmare. Don't save yourself.
Run as fast as you can. So one of the things is I give advice to practitioners to meet the implementation team before they sign a contract, which is counterintuitive or very intuitive depending on your perspective. If you're in sales, you don't like that because it creates a barrier to selling, or it can potentially create a barrier. But there's too much at stake. There's too much at stake for the practitioners, for them personally, their own personal capital, but also for what they're doing, the initiative. They've got to know who they're doing with, because some of that's going to just come down to chemistry, and some of it's not. It's going to be, they're not going to be those the people that care about the person on the other end of the phone. So I would also give you the advice, similar but different, is as Adrienne said, knowing the audience is as easy as asking. You know, some of this is common sense, right? You just ask the person, how would you like to communicate? Like, while we're on this phone call, we have 40 minutes together, what do you want to achieve? You want to see our features? All right, cool. Let's get into a feature discussion. Oh, you want to just kind of build some trust and credibility? Cool, let's tell stories. So adaptive enough as a salesperson to then care to ask the question, what do you need? How would you like this? It's almost like the Burger King kind of methodology of sales, right? Wrapping yourself around the practitioner and saying, how do you want this? Like, we can do a 30-minute demo or an hour and a half demo. Like, I don't care. Like, what do you want to see and how do you want to see it? You'd be surprised at how many salespeople don't do that. Worse than that, they're arrogant to believe that they know how practitioners should see something or experience something, and they don't listen. So, is there any keywords that y'all listen to during calls or in meetings that you kind of like put your spidey sense or put your ears up a little bit about the relationship?
I'm just thinking about the LinkedIn in-mails, actually, and some of the outrageously hilarious, annoying, aggravating ways people try to get my attention in LinkedIn in-mail.
So,
and there's a lot of
so I can solve this for everyone in the room. Everybody ready? This is worth your price of admission. Whenever you send a LinkedIn in-mail, the first 3 paragraphs is about the person you're sending it to. That has nothing to do with you. It's like, I read this thing about you, I saw you speaking, I watched this YouTube video of you, I saw your tweets about so-and-so, like, you are amazing. 3 paragraphs. And then you get to, hey, by the way, I'd love to have 15 minutes to talk to you about what we do or whatever, but you're just amazing and that's awesome. You'll get a call back. You'll get a response. Most people fail because they inverse the relationship and they put maybe a half a paragraph, maybe a sentence about the person they're talking about, and the rest is about them. And that turns all of us off, by the way. That's not Charlotte and Adrienne, that's everyone. So if you really want your emails to work, make it about the person that you're speaking to.
Yeah,
agree?
and just the volume of in-mails that I get, it's probably 20 to 45 a week of people trying to sell me something on LinkedIn. So there's so much noise and clutter, and I'm actually trying to go in there and actually connect with people that I've met at conferences or events and industry stuff, or people that I'm mentoring, and we don't have the email relationship, right? So I'm looking for the valuable stuff, and then I get peppered with such long things from so many sales teams that I don't read a lot of them. It's got to be pretty interesting to get my attention. If more people took that approach, I probably would read it, because I invest a lot in my personal brand and speaking, and you know, if I feel like I have met somebody along the way or I've given something of value to the audience, that's going to catch my attention. but that's just me personally. I think knowing something about who you are and connecting there would cut through it. How many do you get?
Oh, easily 20 to 45 a week as well. You know, a lot.
We shared a name last week. I was like, do you know this woman? And I said her name, and Adrian's like, oh my God. It's like, I get harassed by her like 20 times a week, and they're aggressive.
Yeah.
They're so aggressive.
More often. We're actually blocking people.
Are you intentionally ignoring me? I know you've been meaning to get back to me. I mean.
Yeah. It turns out that stuff doesn't work.
I was actually to the point where I almost was like, gonna write back, just, and I didn't. But I was
Don't argue with stupid. That's just career advice. I think one of the things to think about, both in LinkedIn conversations and in conversations that you have with practitioners, is the more you know about what they do, like the job, like behind the scenes on Sunday night, they look at their week and they have 80 to 90% of it already booked. And they're running around, most of the HR folks are running around fighting fires. Like if you know that, you understand that, you can conceptualize that, you can have empathy around what they do for a living. And I think empathy can go a long way to actually understanding, hey, you know what, eventually we'll talk about me and whatever my bid is, but I want to talk about and learn from you. I think if salespeople took that tact, like I can use this as an experience to learn from Adrian and to learn from Charlotte, not just to sell them something. So one of the keywords things that I look for is fast, easy, and cheap.
Yeah.
So anytime somebody in sales says fast, easy, or cheap, I automatically don't believe them. Like I put them into a box, and then you've got to fight your way out of that box, because those are keywords that I just don't believe.
I thought of one. The sales emails that just say, we're working with Google and Apple and SpaceX, and we should be working with Magellan Health too. I'm like, I'm not even in that category.
No.
And it just sets off radars.
Yep. Yeah, and if you poked into that, you'd probably find out that those are all pilots that didn't go well, right? So yes, they have those logos because they haven't gotten a cease and desist letter from those companies yet to not use their logos, but those are probably just pilots. They probably don't have all of Google as a client.
Yeah, the brand name dropping.
I don't want the logo slide. I mean, I think, I know TMP used to do that when I sold for TMP. There was a logo slide, and I personally don't like that. But you mentioned earlier, if you can get into so-and-so's, site or tech or whatever it is and show me, that lends some credibility to itself, but not the logo slide.
Yeah, I'd rather read a piece of thought leadership. So if you invest in something that gets published and you send me an article that's interesting, or ask for me to quote or comment on something, or, I would rather read that than.
That's a great sales approach, actually, by reaching out to practitioners and say, hey, I want to get your take on this. Like, I read this, and this is what, Danielle said, this is what Bob said. What do you believe? I'd love to get your take because you know this better than I do, so I'm trying to learn from you. Like, who doesn't respond to that? Like, literally, who doesn't respond to something like that? When you're at a conference like this, so I want to talk about like some of the tactical things in sales, going through the expo hall, seeing people at booths, things like that. Like, what do you like and what do you not like?
I like a booth with wine or champagne. That is happening a lot, at least in the employer brand and HR tech conferences. And if I see a brand that's offering little samples of wine and I'm sitting there and I'll just start chatting with whoever the team is because I'm ready for a glass of red wine. It's a great way to get me over. I then actually start building that casual rapport and then start demoing products.
So you need a hook. You need a hook to get you.
A hook, but like the chapstick doesn't do it. The tchotchkes does,
Nobody wants the tchotchkes. No. It's just something to carry around for sure. I would say, you mentioned earlier being in like a more of a social environment where you're bringing different thought leaders in. I see this at a lot of conferences where they'll host a room and they invite people in to demo things. I think you feel a little more like there's a little more focus and attention versus just maybe the booth hall. Because I want to see it. Like, I'm not going to remember it if I just stood at a booth. No, maybe I'll remember the glass of wine, but I actually want to, have an experience with the tech or the solution or whatever it is. And I think having those sessions are definitely helpful versus just the booth hall.
Hardcore sales.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I also like to be invited beforehand. So if you're gonna be at an event and you know that I'm gonna be there, if you send me an email saying, hey, we're gonna be here tomorrow, we'd really love to meet you and pick your brain and show you what we're working on, just that personal invitation,
Right.
short and sweet, I like that.
Yeah.
It's what's interesting is of the advice to give to vendors is most of the people, like the three of us up on stage, we have kids about the same range. If your tchotchkes were actually for our kids, that might be something we'd look at. None of us need an iWatch or whatever. Like none of us need all of that stuff. So even the higher end, things that you'd give away, most practitioners don't need any of that stuff. They make enough money, they buy their own iPads. They don't need an iPad. And anybody that you would have to come to put their business card into the fishbowl for the iPad, you probably don't want as a client. I mean, if we're being honest. So either don't have anything or have stuff that's personalized in that way that basically says, hey, we know that you probably have kids of a different range and they're into these types of gadgets. If you want one, great, come by. No, we don't need to scan your badge. We don't need to do any of that stuff because all that does is create noise. All that does is I'm going to scan your badge and now I'm going to market to you forever up until the point where you say unsubscribe for the love of God. I don't want to know this person. And now you've done irreparable damage to your brand. Well, you didn't get anything out of that. And you'll never get anything out of that. Like, it's almost like for vendors, the advice is to basically be aloof. Like, if you really want to work with us, cool. Like, I'm not going to hunt you down. I'm going to tell you what we do. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to show you stuff. But, if you're not interested, can't force you to buy from us. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't.
I was at an event in Austin, Texas last week, and it was 100 employer brand practitioners for 2 days. And there was actually 3 different tech providers that sponsored different events that ended up giving the room 3-month free pilots. 3 months free analytics, 3 months free, one was a social media company, one's a recruitment marketing analytics company. And that was something that I think we were all kind of surprised to get that much value just for being in the room. And I'm starting to see that a little bit more, but everyone was so excited and felt it was super generous and supportive. And if you put yourself in a position where your clients or potential clients feel like you're really generous and supportive and helping them get the information that they need to build a case to buy your product, because a lot of employer brand people have zero budget. Adrian and I are unique that we have big budgets at the brands where we work. Most people in our shoes are in a newly created role, fresh out of school, and are coming to learn how to build a business case to get investment. So if you can be generous and supportive to help them create that business case and give them some information where they've got real data using your product, it will help them get the money to do so.
Yeah, you see this a lot with organizations. It's almost like an agile budgeting experience where they have a fixed budget-ish, but if you need something halfway through that, make a case for it. Not just cost-benefit analysis, but actually make a case for that. That's actually a collaboration project where a lot of vendors think that I'm going to give you some stuff and then you're going to go do it. No. Practitioners don't have time to do that. I've actually taught vendors that just build the case for them and then plug in data as you need to for the specifics and then literally give them the Word document so that they have something that they can then personalize and then bring to the, whomever they need to internally sell, which is usually multiple people. So don't just put the business case on them. Collaborate and build the business case, if not do it yourself, and then just give it to them all the way to that point. Anything to add to that?
No,
That's money.
It's money. Yeah, you're asking for money, but and you know what? They'll go to the mat for you. The cool thing is you build the relationship and they trust you, and they can go and sell it like you would sell it internally. They'll go to the mat. They're putting their name on it already. When they go and ask whomever in the organization for technology or services, they're putting their name and their reputation on it. So they're already sponsoring you in a way. So work with them and collaborate with them to feed that sponsorship. We've got about 5 minutes left. First thing we want to do, Steve, is we want to see if anybody has any questions. Does anybody have any questions? All right, we do have a question right here. He's going to bring you a mic. And then we have one in the back as well. Fire away, and you can ask really tough questions. It's okay. Oh, nice. Very good.
Quan, CEO, co-founder of the company called ScholarJet. So this is a question regarding
Adrian, Charlotte.
actually all of you. How do you measure the success of your employer brand? Because I've asked a lot of employer branding leaders, and I'm not sure whether it be in like impressions, reach, anything like that. How do you know if a solution is
That is a
successful
great
to
question.
boost the employer branding? Because it's so vague.
Yeah.
That's a fantastic question. I know they've heard it before. So, what don't you start with?
Yeah, I think it's evolving. So, several years ago, we were basically judged on recruiting metrics, so the recruiting funnel, or traffic to a career site. So those things are all important. I think the tough thing for us is that we do have to get our data and analytics from so many different places right now, because there isn't a solution that helps kind of aggregate all of that data in one place. So I'm doing things like, we have an EVP in messaging pillars, and I'm engaged with a vendor that's helping me understand if my messaging pillars are resonating with the audiences that I'm trying to engage with. I also leverage data within LinkedIn to see if we're increasing our engagement with our available talent pool in the hiring priorities that we care about. So traffic isn't necessarily like a key indicator, because I could pay a bunch of money on media and drive a bunch of junk, but I want to know am I engaging with the right audience. So unfortunately, we do have to pull from different sources, and we just create a dashboard based on our hiring priorities and how we're engaging with that talent pool, and if the content that we're developing is converting. We're using employee advocacy and social media, so we're looking at engagement numbers. So it is unfortunately kind of a mishmash of different ways. I don't think any one company has a single answer.
So for me, it's been a different measurement in every role that I've taken. And I think part of the reason I've been successful is that I align the success of the employer brand to the business priorities. So wherever I'm working, I try to plug in and show how this work can help meet those priorities. So at Magellan, I wanted to do things a little bit differently, and we started to measure based on reducing our reliance on agency spend. How much of that agency spend could I take away and build the capability in-house through sourcing? We wanted to increase our referral rate. So we were already at 33% when I was hired, but we knew that referrals were the greatest quality and the longest lasting and lowest cost employees. So we wanted to see the impact of that. And then I really wanted to get particular about quality of application, because those first 4 brands that I helped develop, when they were successful, they saw a flood of applications coming in. And to Adrian's point, they weren't necessarily the right applications. So I wanted to actually start to use employer brand as a smart filter to give candidates enough information to self-select out earlier in the process, so they weren't only competent based on the job, but also that holy grail of cultural fit that we were looking for. So at Magellan, we started to measure quality of application. I asked my TA teams to tell me how they measure quality, because that's an important part. Quality is different everywhere. We put a stake in the ground and said anyone who passes a recruiter screen and is passed on to a hiring manager is a quality app. And within 6 months of launching our brand, that quality of application went up 43%. So I was laser-like focused on measuring that and reporting that out to show that what we were doing was working.
That's the one recruiting metric I actually allow in our employees, the quality, and it's the same metric if they made it from that recruiter interview to a first interview.
That's great.
Same one.
Simple answer that I've always used is hiring's easier, and retention of top talent is higher. So you can retain your best talent, and at the same time, it's easier. Hire is just, the friction in hire has become frictionless. Can we take one more question before we leave, or before we end?
Hey there.
Question.
Craig Foreman with Culture Amp, and I'm really curious to hear about how are you approaching diversity issues in your recruiting? Anything progressive, or there's been a lot of change in this world in the last few years. So I'm just curious to hear your take and how you've been approaching diversity in recruiting.
Do you have anything progressive? I have an answer, but it's probably not the best one.
I wouldn't say super progressive. I would actually say we're turning more towards actually going back to more grassroots efforts, actually. And then developing out quite a bit of content and sharing stories internally of our folks that have, really grown their careers and have diverse backgrounds. So I would say it's more of a grassroots approach, actually.
I base all of my work on strategic insights before I go out and do an attraction campaign. So my key takeaways actually do the research to uncover what is really going to motivate the audience you're trying to seek, so then you can replicate more of that. Most people assume that everyone's driven by the same kind of career attributes, and every time I've actually done the research with a group, I've learned something really shocking that I then carry through to my attraction campaigns that better connects with someone as a whole person.
We're going to wrap because they're about to come up here and grab the mics from us. Thank you all so much for coming. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.